Welcome, everybody. It's 18th of March, 2024, and welcome to episode 225. Demographics suck, and they seem to be from some other era. On today's webinar, I'm going to be reading one of my articles out loud, and I want to take your questions, your disagreements, your agreements. This is a sing-along for you. I'd like to hear what you think about this, because as usual, I think we need to do some critical thinking about demographics. Hi, Ana Lucia. So I'm going to shift over to where I've got the article on my screen, and then we will get cooking. Let's see if I can press the right button here today. How's this? Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so you can find this on both Medium and in our LinkedIn newsletter. Hi, Chantel P. Oh, send me an update. I want to hear how you're doing privately if you want. This article is called Demographics Suck and Are from Some Other Era. Most companies rely heavily on the use of demographics. We take our target audiences and or our current customers and we break them into groups based on similar genders, ages, ethnicities, and other markers. We assume that people who share some of these qualities can be addressed, marketed to, or advertised to similarly. We have assumptions about people's lives. If I say a 50-year-old woman, you'll picture someone. She might have some gray hair. She might be a little overweight, a little wrinkly. She's probably a mom, maybe even a grandmother. Now, if I say a 21-year-old black man, you picture somebody else. We can narrow down this audience with other details often found in personas or segments. He has a certain type of car. He makes a certain amount of money. He has or doesn't have children. If I tell you the 50-year-old woman makes 40,000 American dollars a year, now we think of her differently. We make assumptions about where she shops, what she buys, and which brands she prefers. Asking you to imagine these people reminds us of how we work from assumptions and stereotypes unless and until we have better evidence and data about people and their behaviors. We assume what a woman of a certain age will purchase, do, or could be convinced to purchase or do. We imagine what a young man spends his money on and why. We make a lot of assumptions about people. Oop, what's this? Sorry, Firefox had a problem. How strange. Am I still alive here? I hope so. Let's check. Hopefully, does everybody see a red flag going off? Red flag, yes. Okay, sorry. Crashed on my phone and I control the effects from there. So going back to the article, we make a lot of assumptions about people once we start talking about demographics. This is why I call demographics lazy buckets. I'm no expert on the history of advertising, but I imagine that once upon a time, businesses of all types, especially in America and Western Europe, were mostly selling to white men. These were the people who made and controlled the money, so we had to convince them our product or service was something they might need. People probably started noticing some differences among white men. Some of them have children, and their children might need things. Okay, now we can advertise to them based on being a parent. Then we noticed that some of them may have more money than others. We may want to think about their income or socioeconomic status. We'll promote the bargain product or something with fewer features to the white guys with less money. We'll market or advertise something more luxurious, elite, or complete to the white guy with more money. It was easy to put people in buckets when we mostly cared about white guys. There used to be more conformity. The more different you were, the more you were seen as unwell, inconsequential, or an outsider. I've seen enough 1950s short films via Mystery Science Theater 3000 to know that just before my own lifetime, it was extremely important to all dress the same way, follow a strict behavioral code, speak and write certain ways, and not stand out. We eventually started marketing to women, mostly based on their current or future housewife role. We wanted to sell them things so they would feel prettier, smell nicer, be a better mother, or be able to win or keep that man. You should cook and clean all day, but have soft hands, perfect hair, and something delicious for your hardworking husband. Be awake and energetic when he gets home so that you can listen to him talk about his day. It was one-dimensional. But if we consider today's demographics, even though we might have added dimensions like which brands people like and what kind of car they drive, we're still putting people into buckets that boil them down into stereotypes. Advertising and marketing. We oversimplify humans. We assume things like people who make a similar amount of money or have a certain number of children or drive a certain type of car probably want, need, or do the same things. 50-year-old women living in a certain area and making X dollars per year mostly want, need, and do the same things. It was easy to do this when we mostly cared about white guys who liked to conform. It's a new world, but marketers still do this. We can tell by the ads we see, even when they are supposedly targeted. I get lots of ads that are pink and feminine, about my children, though I purposely didn't have any children. Give clear messages that I don't look good, I don't smell good, and I'm not doing the right thing about my menstruation or my menopause. Everything in my life would be fixed by just a few minutes a day of chair yoga, face yoga, or wall Pilates. Ads for makeup. I hate makeup and I rarely wear it. This is a camera filter you're all seeing. I have no makeup on. Ads for fashion. Have you seen me? I am the least fashionable person out there. I mostly wear men's concert t-shirts and men's hiking pants, though this is a men's Disney t-shirt. I get ads for home decor, despite me doing no home decoration, having no sense of style, and leaving this all to my husband. We can tell that all of the above ads target me by gender and a little by age. Is that all I am? In my Customers Know You Suck book, Craig Sullivan said in Chapter 5, Facebook's and Google's business strategy is based on you doing something suboptimal with your marketing efforts. If companies increased their level of efficiency with online ads, Facebook's and Google's profit margins would drop. I'm definitely not the person advertisers think they're selling to. I'm a woman who purposefully had no children. I'm a dog mom. I nearly always shop in men's departments, even for shoes. Outside of very special occasions, I don't wear makeup. I have 2 500cc motorcycles. I have a camper. I have a shitty non-Toyota I can't wait to replace, probably with a Toyota. #not sponsored. Most of the YouTubers I watch go on cruises, discuss music theory, or are intelligent comedians poking fun at movies and TV. I'm happy with my skincare, hair care, deodorant, etc. You won't convince me that I need to smell like something else. In the past few years, I can think of only one ad I saw that I actually thought was relevant. Hurtigruten figured out that I like cruises and suggested an interesting voyage I'd never heard of. Now I hope to save up to cruise with them, or their competitor, all along the Norwegian coast. But every other ad, every day, on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., garbage. Doesn't feel like it's for me. Companies wasting money and in some cases, insulting me. Psychographics relate to people's opinions, interests, and lifestyles. At least that brings some humanity in and doesn't bucket people by demographics like salary, skin color, or gender. But we can still get psychographics wrong depending on how we collect the data. What is my lifestyle? Facebook thinks it knows my interests, but the last time I looked at its list, many years ago, it was nonsensical. It had products, services, people, and countries I had no interest in. This is reflected in the irrelevant Instagram ads I get. What are my opinions? Companies don't really know. They guess what they are by showing me stuff, seeing what I do or don't do, and making assumptions based on content plus action or inaction. However, themes inside of content are complex, and reasons for action or inaction are also complex. We can get closer to understanding people by using qualitative research, especially observational, to understand their behavior, tasks, and knowledge. A family member once described me as, "Debbie is the type of person who will research a purchase for months. The item costs $7, and after months, she will decide to not buy it." That's my behavior. Careful shopping and decision making. Put me in a bucket with other careful shoppers. Fine-tune your website, UX, etc. for someone who wants more information before deciding. Hurtigrutens' website didn't explain what options might be for people who don't eat fish, nor did it explain how the ship is in a port for 15 minutes, but I can go on a 4-hour excursion from that port. I had to email them to learn these. The website wasn't fine-tuned for careful shoppers who want more details up front. Other companies as examples. I'm not saying that the following companies don't use demographics or psychographics. I'm saying that I can see how they are also working from target audience behaviors, tasks, and knowledge. Virgin Voyages is an adults-only cruise line. This doesn't mean that you have no children. This isn't demographically about you. This is about the task of going on a kid-free cruise vacation, or the behavior you plan to exhibit on a ship known for raunchy named ice cream parlors and skimpy costumes worn by entertainers. Their destinations match likely behaviors, more party ports, and they designed the ship without children in mind. IKEA shouldn't care what your demographics are. You could be rich or not, in the city or country, any ethnicity, any language, any favorite car brand, etc. Your task is to get decent furniture for a small space. You have enough knowledge to build the furniture yourself. Whole Foods in America is an expensive supermarket that wants you to believe that they have curated the best and highest quality healthy foods. If your task is to buy healthier products due to disease, health issues, or lifestyle choices, Whole Foods might be a match. Compare this to going to a regular market and shopping from a small selection of organic and/or non-GMO products, plus needing the knowledge of what to look for on labels. Whole Foods tries to remove the knowledge required to shop there since everything is curated. You don't have to do as much label reading since you already know that the food there, supposedly, meets very high standards. I prefer to shop at Sprouts over Whole Foods, so #not sponsored. Thinking of customers and sorting them by behavior, tasks, and knowledge would require deeper research. We'd have to do more than survey them or dump them in focus groups. We'd have to go beyond assumptions about people because of age, skin color, immigration, or being part of another group. We'd need to observe them and speak to them to better understand their behaviors, tasks, and knowledge, and how these create opportunities and problems for our companies to solve. And that's that. That is the article. I would love to take questions or hear people's comments or see where you disagree, or what do you think about demographics and personas and segmenting people into buckets. I would love to know what you think. And while I wait for your questions and comments, let's of course say thank you to all of the paid Patreon members in my Patreon community. You can join for free, and there are also paid tiers as well. I definitely recommend joining at least for free. You will be the first to know all kinds of things. You will see stuff that people sometimes don't see for weeks or months. You will get discounts on stuff. So even joining for free has its advantages, but special thanks to the people who are paying at least $1 American a month for the paid version. So let's see if anybody has any questions, comments, reactions, responses. I would love to hear what the people joining live are thinking. I'm just going to take a peek and see if there's any comments or questions that I might have missed. Let's see. Oh, that is the wrong button. Ana Lucia says, I can definitely see why demographics are completely outdated, especially for UX. But I was here wondering if marketing would agree. Have you ever talked with someone from marketing about it? I have not talked to someone in marketing about this lately, and it's a good question. Even if I do talk to someone in marketing, it still might not be the pulse of what many marketers think. So this would really require a larger research project. But I think that marketers are very used to working with demographics. Once in a while, I will see someone say, oh, demographics, we shouldn't focus on them as much. We should focus more on behaviors, especially if they have some sort of behavioral psychology or behavioral economics background. But in general, I tend to see marketers and some UX people generally making personas or profiles or segments, or call it what you will, generally based on demographics, age, ethnicity, income, where you live, and not really thinking more about behaviors. So I think marketing still kind of loves this. And let's be honest, it's certainly faster and cheaper to assume that lots of 50-year-old women do the same thing, want the same thing, think the same way, need the same products. They must be in a similar stage of life. They must have children or families or something. So I think it's certainly faster and cheaper and easier to imagine that we can group people in these ways. But I challenge people to go beyond that. Chantel P says, we are currently looking at our form fields as we now have to prove what is the relevance of demographics for signing up. Great. I love that you're doing this. I'll talk about that in a moment. Chantel says, I think demographics can be useful, but only if it's cross-used with other research methods. Yes. So I'm not saying I never look at demographics. I do collect some demographic information in screener surveys, but not because I want to put people necessarily in buckets, but to make sure I have a good mix of people. I think if we're not looking at some of that in screener surveys, we could end up doing research with 6, 10, 20 white guys or something like that, and then we will not have achieved anything that looks like diversity. But I find that when people are signing up for stuff and we ask them demographics, it's typically because the marketing department wanted that. So when I used to sign up to stuff and they would say, are you male or female? Are you this or that? Are you white, Hispanic, Latino, black, something else? They would have all these checkboxes or lists. And ultimately, no company really needs that for me to be a customer or to utilize their service. That's probably not important. It's usually what a marketing department wants, so they know what bucket to put me in. But here I am telling you, I don't want to be in these buckets, and a lot of these buckets don't really make sense. I find that a lot of my interests are stereotypically masculine. My sense of style is stereotypically masculine. So when people throw me into buckets with women, I just feel like I don't belong. I've been asking for decades if I can have some sort of other gender. Like, I don't even know what to do to get out of these ridiculous buckets where everything is pink and flowers and happy Mother's Day. Andre, hello Andre, says, I imagine this comes up with clients when research is brought up. Are there any go-to stories or examples you use to help demonstrate how ineffective demographics are for learning about behaviors? Yeah, great question. Again, I'm using demographics more minimally in my research. I might start with some demographics from the perspective of, let's make sure we meet men, women, non-binary, and people who identify as having other genders. Let's make sure we're meeting people of multiple ethnicities. So it's not so much that I'm assuming that, oh, the white people think this and the black people think this. That would be kind of dropping people into these buckets. I'm asking about the demographics more to make sure I just am meeting a good rainbow mix of people. And then what we normally do after research at my company, Delta CX, yes, you can hire us, is we typically end up delivering to the client not personas, not segments, not these profiles. We typically deliver behavioral typologies, and they're usually along a continuum. We say, look, we found people who fit into this bucket number one, and this bucket number one represents people who didn't want to put in effort or perceived this issue in this way, or were at this stage in their knowledge or savvy about this, or are this close or far away from being your sweet spot. And because of how they behave, how they think, what their perspective is, how they decide things, do they have collaborators? So typically we're starting with something that looks like demographics just so we can get a mix, not putting people into buckets, not stereotyping them, not making assumptions about what they need because of these things. And then we deliver behavioral typologies that says, look, no matter what people's age or gender or ethnicity or something else were, here's who fits into buckets 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5, or however many they were. We've delivered 3, we've delivered 5. It really depends on what the topic of research has been about. So to me, I would rather start with a good mix of representative people, and that has to do with great recruiting. Let's put up the new graphic. Yeah, here's our research process, and here's recruiting right over here. We want to make sure that we are meeting people who make sense for the target audience that we want to answer questions about and learn more about. And so that means sometimes we might have to take a look at some demographics, but in the end, I'm not putting people into demographic buckets. I'm not creating personas based on demographics. And I'm always pretty horrified when I sometimes see personas made very often by newbies, but sometimes not by newbies, where they say that I've literally seen this is a white person and this is a not white person, as if all not white people fit in the same bucket. And that was, kind of horrifying. And it was hard to not see that as a little bit racist and weird and ethnocentric. So I try not to be that person naturally, but then I try to specifically look for that in our research work as well, to try to get as many perspectives as I can that come from the relevant target audience groups. So for example, right now in my day job, I work with university students. You would think, oh, I'm mostly talking to people in their late teens and early 20s. Mostly, yes, but there are older people who come back to school as well, and so we try to meet some of those people as well in our research studies. I don't want to just go with the typical demographic or persona that someone in college or university is probably 17 to 22. Chantel P. says, I recently did stakeholder interviews with some members of staff for a new feature. It was actually them who gave me the demographic information based on their observations. I guess my point is, if you are doing observation research, you may be able to see people in real life and then learn about your demographics. I think we have to be careful, because I know that at the end of a research study, I don't want to say, people in their 20s said this, and black people said this, and Indian people said this, because usually that's not the way my studies go. Usually the way my studies go is humans said this, and here's some people who had some things in common. Maybe freshmen were similar because they were new to the university, and based on what we were studying, they didn't have savvy in this area yet, and so there were things that confused them that didn't confuse juniors and seniors. So maybe that's one way that we're bucketing them, and that might seem demographic, but in the end, I'm really bucketing them by behavior. If that behavior if it just happens to match up or tends to match up with what year they are in school, okay, then we have matched something with a demographic, but that doesn't mean I want to make an assumption. Larry Marine often talks about, and who has the disruptive research book? Read Larry's disruptive research book. Larry talks about how sometimes we make the mistake of using a persona or a profile to say, oh, this person is savvy in Microsoft Excel. They're an expert in Excel. When we really get down to it, and when we really look at some of the more expert level features and functions in Excel, the average person doesn't know those. The average person might be good at Excel. and they might be good at writing a few formulas, but they might not be the expert that you said, and now you're calling them an expert, which means you expect them to have certain knowledge and savvy, and they might not have that knowledge and savvy. Now there's a mismatch. Ana Lucia says, it's actually pretty interesting to remain unbiased during behavioral typologies. When you analyze the people in the same bucket, you may even realize they're so diverse. Different ages, jobs, incomes from different places, but they believe in the same things or behave the same way. Exactly, yes, and thanks to Stream Elements for reminding me to continue thanking our Patreon members. You can join at patreon.com/CXCC. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube, CX-CC. And of course, if you're joining live, after this video ends, it's going to be unlisted for Patreon members only for 2 weeks and then available to the public. So one of the perks of being a paid Patreon member, early access. And check out more. I'm going to do about 2 of these a week. Check cxcc.to/events. Yes. So I challenge people to not just think of people as the typical demographics. Like when I see, is your age 45 to 54? Okay, that's where I am right now because I'm 52. But do you realize that in a couple of years or a few years when I'm 55, you're going to put me in a bucket with people in their 60s? I don't feel anywhere close to people in their 60s in any way. I just don't, or at least the stereotypes of what we think is going on for people in their 60s. And so I've often told clients, okay, so what? You've got someone in their 60s, or you have someone who makes X dollars, or you have someone who whatever. How do they see themselves? And I remember having this battle with a client many, many years ago, 2008, 2007. They had a company that sold clothing for people who did horseback riding. And we were trying to figure out what their brand and mood and personality were. And they kept kind of flip-flopping in that they were like, well, horseback riding is an expensive hobby, so this is really like rich, fancy people. And I'm like, okay, we'll design something kind of elegant and fancy. And they'd be like, no, that's all wrong. And then they would say, no, horseback riding is for people who love to be in the stables and get dirty. They're covered in dirt and they're up to their ankles in horse poop. And I go, okay, we'll design something kind of rugged and dirty and rustic and wood and stuff. And then they're like, no, these people are rich and this is an expensive hobby. And I just said, okay, look, we're trying to put these people into these buckets, and we can't have both buckets at the same time. It's very hard to visually design something that is simultaneously elegant and dirty and rustic and full of horse poop. So, how do these people see themselves? And they said, oh, we know that. And they said, they see themselves like this. We designed for that. They loved it, and it was super successful. So I think that we have to remember, how do people see themselves? Another story that reminds me of this, and then we'll wrap up for today, is many years ago, I was a volunteer doing interviews for my university. You could schedule an interview with a university alum, and we would send in a little report saying if we thought the university should accept this person or not for people who had applied. And I remember I was talking to a young woman who was fantastic, and I absolutely thought that the school should accept her. And I don't remember how we got to this point in the conversation, but she talked about how filling out forms for American colleges and universities was really a negative experience for her because we had so many checkboxes and radio buttons about your ethnicity. Are you white, black, Asian American, Latino, Hispanic? Are you this, that, from here, from there? And she said, my family is Korean and I grew up in Argentina. What box do I check? Where's my box? Where's Korean Argentinian? Where's Asian South American? And I remember that changed my perspective for the rest of my life. And my question was, why are we even putting this poor woman in a bucket? Why are we trying to make her fit into Asian American or whatever when she sees herself as Korean Argentinian? And why do we care? What's this about? So I often think about, how do people see themselves? Yeah, Ana Lucia says, now that you mention it. Uh-oh, where's Ana Lucia going? We'll find out in 40 seconds or so. So these are the things that I tend to think about. I tend to think about, would I want to be put in this bucket that I'm putting this other person in? Are these fair buckets? Are they honest? Are they based on weird things? I mean, my behavior is fairly consistent. Whether I've been 12 years old, 24, 34, 44, and eventually 54, I'm kind of the same person. The person you are watching today is like 80% of who I was when I was 4. So why should my demographics will change, but my personality and my behaviors have been quite the same for many decades. My interest in wearing comfortable clothes over anything else drops me into a sports store bucket rather than a pretty frilly Easter dress bucket. So you can ask me my age, and you can assume that because Debbie is 52 or eventually 55, that I fit in this bucket. I remember when I turned 45, and now I had to check the 45 to 54 bucket, and I was like, do I have stuff in common with someone who's 54? And then I was like, well, I'm going to be probably the same person when I'm 54. I'll just be a little more wrinkly. But luckily now we have, these camera filters, so I don't look as wrinkly. Could turn off the camera filter and make you all lose your lunch. But, I'm still the same person with the same interests, with the same values, with the same priorities, with the same approaches. Those could change, but they're not as likely to change. But I'll keep checking off different boxes for my age because you keep putting me in different buckets. But what's the difference? Ana Lucia says, I can understand that person's confusion. Maybe I lived in a really liberal place and I never had to think about ethnicity, race, or whatever, but I think we never had to think about one's roots. I think it's a very American thing. For some reason, so many things in America have these forms you have to fill out that ask what your race or ethnicity is. They will sometimes ask if you are LGBTQIA+. They will often ask your gender, and sometimes they ask male or female. That's it, binary. They will often ask if you are a veteran of the American military. Sometimes they will ask if you have disabilities. For whatever reason, these forms are common in America, and I've heard they're common in other countries as well. I don't think Europe asks those, but America does, and this could be job forms and other social services forms, and I think the census asks us these things. They claim it's to make sure they understand who people are and get people services, but again, I'm not sure. And I'm right now I'm not totally talking about government services. I'm talking more about user and customer experiences, products and services, product strategy, service design. Chantel says we do have the same types of questions in the UK. Yeah, so maybe they're not in Portugal where Ana Lucia is, but they're definitely, I've seen them from America. I've had some Indian people say they're sometimes asked these things. I worked with a South African company a few years ago, and they asked a lot of questions about race because many companies were under pressure to hire non-white people, which fell into various buckets, Indian, Black, and other ones. So, yeah, I think countries do ask this stuff. I'll just check off white. Sometimes when I apply to speak at a conference, it will ask me, are you in any marginalized groups? Or are you in any underrepresented groups? And my answer is always, that depends. Do you have a lot of women speakers? If not, I'm part of an underrepresented group. If you have lots of women speakers, I'm not. So it's in some cases it's relative. Chantel says, I think the flag is they assume everyone knows what the different options mean. Yeah, or that there is an option for everyone, and a lot of people don't like to check a box that says other. Nobody wants to be the other, the thing we didn't think of, the box we didn't care enough about to make a separate box out of. Anyway, we'll wind down for the day since I'm trying to keep these around a half hour. But remember, I'm doing 2 of these a week. So on Wednesday, I will be back at 11 p.m. Italy time. So check our times. And I'm going to be talking about how we create customer disloyalty. We get so hung up saying customers are disloyal. Ooh, disloyalty, get used to it. But we make customers disloyal, and I'm going to be talking about that. So thanks to everybody who's joining live. If you're watching the YouTube video later, please give us a like and a comment, as it really helps us in the algorithm, and share it out to your friends and loved ones and coworkers. So thanks again to everybody for joining. Have a great Monday, and I will catch you soon.